We're going into our conversation on fitness and nutrition. And today we're focusing on an interaction that we have with food. And usually how we think we're interacting with food is just by consuming it, right? We think that our interaction with food starts from the kitchen. When we get there, when we, are preparing what we want for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. But our interaction with food doesn't actually start in the kitchen. It starts in our mind. Today we're focusing on something called food noise, which is a growing concern in the field of nutrition and well-being. Food noise refers to persistent, intrusive thoughts about food that go beyond physical hunger. And we're trying to understand this better today. Joining us on the line is clinical dietitian and nutrition expert Lerato Radebe. Lerato, thank you so much for your time. Good morning and welcome to Channel Africa.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Lerato, food noise. How are we interacting with food? What does this actually mean? Because the word food and the word noise don't seem to gel well together. Food is for eating and noise is for sound. How does this even come together?
Okay. Yeah, it's actually a very, very critical component of a lot of people, especially people who are trying to lose weight. People who have an unhealthy habit with food, like being overweight, for instance. And basically what it is your thoughts about food the whole day that are beyond just thinking about what should I eat. So for most people, what happens is, especially if you're trying to lose weight, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I wonder what I should have for breakfast and what is in the fridge. I think what is in the fridge, I have this in the fridge. And so if I have this in the fridge, I can actually make this. Then you log on to your social media and you scroll on social media and all the cooking and recipe reels pop up and you're just consuming all these interactions in terms of food, and then the whole time what it's making you do is think about food almost 24/7 unnecessarily, which is very counterproductive for somebody who's trying to lose weight, because those cravings that you might have are then amplified by 10 every time you're now just thinking about food. And the food thoughts and looking at food and seeing food in your canteen, seeing your neighbor eating or somebody around you eating, and that constantly then makes you think, oh yes, she's eating a burger. I'd actually like to have a burger too, and I'd enjoy a burger and have a burger for lunch too. So that's in essence what the food noise is.
You know, my thoughts are, isn't this normal though? Because I think we come from the concept that we must eat 3 meals a day. And essentially, I think most of us feel, okay, what are we going to have for dinner today? Especially if you're the person who prepares the dinner in your home. You think, okay, let me look for some ideas because I'm so bored of eating like the same food all the time. And I'll go on social media and scroll a little bit. Okay, this looks like a great idea. A chicken pasta for dinner. I'll see a recipe and I'll do that. Aren't we all thinking about what we're going to eat next? What makes that different from this food noise that we're referring to?
Well, in essence, the biggest problem with it is that it can trigger cravings. So if you are somebody who's trying to reduce their appetite, it can trigger cravings. Then what it also does as well is that it makes you less aware of what you're eating. So a lot of people, their food recall of how much they've actually eaten that day tends to be not as accurate as somebody who does not have as much food noise. So you'll have somebody who's extremely overweight and says, oh, I only had an apple or 2 apples a day. But what happened is, in between all these small little thoughts, what was it a thought? Did I actually eat that apple? Did I actually eat that pear? Did I actually finish the food on my child's plate? Did I finish all of it? How much was it? So their ability to actually recall and digest how much they've actually eaten is then sometimes impaired. In terms of it being normal, it's also not normal because we're actually bombarded by too much variety in terms of food and eating habits. There's just too many options, and those options are almost the gateway to bad eating habits. We don't need all those pictures of fast foods every day. We don't need the unhealthy recipes that are put in place. We should be consuming very simple foods, as less processed as possible, and with less additives and additional things that we add to the food. So by being bombarded by like imagery of all that, encourages us to do it, and add all those things and add all those extra foods, whereas just a simple potatoes that are chopped up with a bit of a steak and vegetables is sufficient for dinner. You don't have to go the route of all these elaborate recipes that then people are then deciding to do just because it was thrown in their faces.
I see. So is the issue here the fact that we are just thinking about food? I mean, for many of us who are on social media platforms, if you scroll, you're probably going to come across something food related. Or is the issue here the thought process from food thoughts to the action of what you do about the thoughts you're having?
Yeah. So it is that's why advertising exists, because we know that exposure links to then the behavior and the behavior happening. So maybe if we were bombarded by healthy options, and I also see these influencers who now go to takeaway restaurants and they're eating horrible stuff, and this is just daily what is being every second video on social media is likely all of this stuff as well. So unfortunately, it's the wrong types of foods that we are being bombarded by. It's the wrong quantities also. You have people eating huge quantities, and that does then translate into behavior with most people, and negative or bad behavior.
I see. All right. Stay on the line, Lerato. We're going to take a short break and then we'll come back to speak about that. We're speaking about something called food noise, and it's, the persistent intrusive thoughts about food that may lead to the actions of overeating and, dieting in a way that is unhealthy for you. Lerato Radebe will continue this conversation with us after the break.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Keeping you on the know and on the move.
Food noise. It's the conversation we're having in this hour of the show for our fitness and nutrition conversation of the day. And this is the intrusive thoughts, the persistent thoughts about food that can lead to unhealthy actions when it comes to your diet. And we continue this particular conversation with Lerato Radebe, who's a clinical dietitian and nutrition expert. Now, if you're having these thoughts, Lerato, if you notice, some of us are hearing some of these, words for the first time, words like food noise, and we're like, hang on, I actually do think about food quite a lot, and I interact with food quite a lot on social media. I interact with food quite a lot on my social media platforms and just in general with my mind, and that might be making me overeat. But I don't know how to turn my thoughts off, and that's a huge problem, because if it only had to do with us moving to the kitchen, I can decide that, oh no, I'm not going to enter the kitchen today and I'm going to just pretend like nothing exists. But I'm not really sure how to quiet down the noise and the constant thinking about food in my head.
Yeah. So one thing that you can do is be more intentional about planning your meals, and plan them like a week ahead in advance, which is a great option for most people, because then you do your grocery shopping once. Because also that's another place where people are then thinking about food. You're thinking, what's in my pantry? What do I have to go to the shop and buy? Do I have this? Do I not have this? So it's not just at the eating level, it's also at the planning phases and the purchasing of food, where while you're grocery shopping as well, you're then constantly thinking about food as well. So what I recommend people generally do is plan your meals and your meals ahead of time. Once a week is a good idea, where you're then doing your grocery shopping for the week and everything you need for that week, so that you don't have to have another situation where you're thinking about, do I need this? Do I have this ingredient? Do I have this at home? The other thing as well that we always advise people is never go shopping on an empty stomach or hungry.
Yeah.
Because you'll be then thinking about how hungry you are, and you're likely to then buy the incorrect foods and what you're craving because you're then hungry as well. Then, in terms of that menu, you don't necessarily need to vary your diet as much as people think you do. I always recommend that you only need two to maximum three options for a week in terms of variety. So if you're buying your fruits, you don't have to have a different fruit every day for 7 days. You can just have 2 to 3 options that you're buying, and then repeat them until you finish them and you've consumed them. And then at the end of the week, you then know, this week we had watermelon, we had peaches, we had apples. Next week, I'm going to buy grapes, oranges, and a nectarine. And that's what you're going to do. It also limits your waste in terms of wastage. A lot of people end up throwing huge amounts of food and vegetables out because they've just gone off before they were able to prepare them. So just two to three options in terms of what you're doing, and then repeat that for the week, which then limits how much you're thinking, how much you then, the creativity that you have to try. It's okay to have that chicken pasta for 2 days or every second day, and repeat it for 3 days until you finished it, and then you have then another option.
That makes
But
me want to
we
cry, Lerato, because, I'm actually one of those people like, oh my goodness, I feel like I've been eating the same thing and I want to change it up a little bit. But I'm pretty sure it's so different for someone who has, issues with food noise. And that does, create a little bit more consistency and less things to think about when it comes to food. But if there are people having challenges with quieting down their minds, I mean, just last week on the show, in fact, we were speaking about, overthinking. And some people are overthinkers. And even when they have, the plan, and you've told them, yeah, plan your meals, eat the pasta 3 times a week, eat something else for the other 2 days of the week, and you might have a plan, but the noise just won't stop. Is there some other challenge that you might be dealing with here?
So yes, it could be mental health related. Oh, before I wanted to go to that, is that you can still have the same thing, but then switched up differently. Like for
Okay.
instance, today you can have a steak and roast potatoes, and then tomorrow you have a steak salad. So the basis of what you cooked yesterday becomes the new meal for tomorrow, that changes it slightly, but you're not really having to change your ingredients that much. So that's what we're suggesting we do. But in terms of it can, what you're mentioning about any underlying conditions, that you can also be anxiety is linked to, and mental health issues in terms of anxiety, where you just have intrusive thoughts, and then your intrusive thought then becomes food, for instance. So it is of value to pop into your doctor, pop into one of your mental health practitioner's office, and discuss those options with them. I always say, as a dietitian, that, for instance, weight loss has very little to do with food and eating, and most of the time is a discipline. It is a mental health and processing and dealing with mental health. Some people, it might be about trauma, where the food that they're eating is comforting, and the comfort of it, and the comfort food that people are then. So it can be linked to traumas, it can be linked to anxieties, it can be linked to OCDs, for instance. So there is a huge component, a huge mental health illness component that does need to be taken into consideration. Once you've tried all of these avenues that we mentioned, where you trying to quieten down the noise yourself, if that's not working still and you're still getting the intrusive thoughts, it is of value to pop into a doctor, pop into a psychologist, psychiatrist, and have discussions with them too.
Lerato, rumors have it that some people have been using weight loss medication, which suppresses your appetite, and they say that some of these medications have helped them with food noise. Is this something that one can consider if they want to get rid of the food noise, suppressing their appetite so they're not constantly hungry or constantly thinking about food? Or is this a conversation that is better left off to the dietitians and the experts like yourself, because it can be harmful?
So it is, it's one of those which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Okay.
And most likely your appetite was increased by having the intrusive thoughts. So the minute you reduce your intrusive thoughts, you reduce how much you're thinking about food, you won't have the need or that hunger the whole time. So I would rather take an approach where you are rather decreasing and working towards decreasing the intrusive thoughts. Listen to music. That's another good idea. Like pop headphones on and have music. And in the day, if you're listening to music constantly throughout the day, you've got less time in that time to be thinking about food. In your times where you're not actively doing work, fill those times and those days with other activities not related to thinking about food.
Okay.
Tell your friends and family as well, because when you get to work, I always see, I work in a hospital where people, by the time they arrive at work, they're already talking about what are we eating for lunch, guys. And between that morning and tea time and lunchtime, they literally just speaking about food. So have plans with your friends to say, we're going to bring our lunch to work. And so everybody, let's plan how we're doing, what we're buying. Let's do it together once a week, and we're not having to do it daily. So in a nutshell, I would definitely not recommend medication to try reduce the intrusive thoughts. The side effects do not outweigh the benefits when you have not attempted non-invasive and non-medical options. Once we've tried and we've failed with those options, that is something that we can consider, but we have to prove and demonstrate. And the other thing about it as well is that once you come off the medication, what happens?
Yeah.
A lot of people end up gaining weight with all this medication. They gain all the weight back times 2 because they never dealt with the underlying problem. And so that then just has them, spiraling back to exactly where they were once you remove the medication.
All right, I'm glad that you've put that to bed as well, because it's a very important conversation. People have been having a lot of conversations about medication, and sometimes we go there first without dealing with the underlying conversations before that. But thank you so much. That's all we have time for, and I think this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you for helping us unpack it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for having me. Have a good day further.
Have a great day. That's clinical dietitian and nutrition expert Lerato Radebe speaking to us about the dynamics of food noise. It's 11:30 Central Africa time. We've circled back to this time once again for our latest sports news.